Welcome back to the Soul and Spirit podcast. My name is Reverend Lexi Hovis, and I have a very exciting episode today because I'm starting a new thing where I would like to do interviews with people on their spirituality. And of course, I'm starting with my closest friends and colleagues. And so today I have the lovely Amy Auset Roan. She goes by Auset. She's from around here in Indiana like me. I met her, gosh, I was probably
I think you were 16.
16. I was 16,
Yeah.
so I've known her half my life now. She is a wonderful photographer. She actually did the photos for my wedding many years ago. I met her through my Egyptian studies. She teaches classes on ancient Egypt and the Neteru and everything to do with that. She has her own priestess program where you can become a priestess of many different deities in the Egyptian traditions. And she has her own Patreon. So she does all kinds of things. And it's wonderful. We have such lovely conversations about stuff, especially ancient Egyptian studies and places and all of the things.
And magic.
And magic, yes.
Yes.
All of
Yes.
it. So, welcome.
Thank you so much for having
I'm so
me.
excited that you are my very first interviewee.
Yes.
Yes.
Interviewee.
Interviewee. I thought that was the right word, and then
Yes.
it sounded weird.
Yes. So wonderful.
Yes. So I wanted to have you on today because you have such a similar kind of belief system now as me. What did you start? Did you have any kind of like solid faith background growing up?
Yes. I grew up in a very fundamental Baptist church. So there was a lot of screaming and stomping, a lot of fear, you know, going to hell, that type of thing. And when I got older, I started thinking, a little bit more on my own, I
Yeah.
guess. And there was just a lot of things that didn't feel right. And so I kind of was getting away from the church as organized religion, but I was always very spiritual. So, I mean, I enjoyed my devotional time in the evening, reading my Bible and things like that, and, connecting to this higher power.
Right.
So that was something that I really missed. And when my daughter was in kindergarten, I met someone who was teaching meditation classes. I had been watching John Edward, his show Crossing Over,
Yeah.
and I was fascinated by it because he was able to pass messages from people who had passed away on to their loved ones with like such accuracy.
Hmm.
And so the whole psychic thing was kind of, very intriguing to me, but I was never able, growing up as I did to explore any of that.
Right.
So then I started going to meditation classes and, it's something that people say in your spiritual practice, like, how do you develop, your psychic gifts? And you always groan when someone says, meditate.
Yes.
But it really is true. You
Yeah.
need to have, some type of way to literally clear your mind and be open to what I'm going to say is remembering
Mhm.
things that you subconsciously know
Right.
inside of you. So it's not necessarily always meeting with someone outside of yourself,
Right.
like a higher thing than yourself. It's an aspect of you, which even growing up, you invite the Holy Spirit in. So I think it's all kind of that was my background and kind of brought me into where I am today with my
Cool.
practice.
It's always interesting to me how, like, if you really break down the different traditions, like what we grew up in and what we believe now, they do a lot of the similar things. Like when I would have to go to the Pentecostal church and like, yeah, they invite the Holy Spirit in and they would even speak in tongues. I'm like, what is so different about that and like giving messages from spirit? It's so similar.
Right.
But to one side, it's, sin and hell and, talking to demons or whatever it is.
Right. Right.
They just immediately kinda shut down anything that's different.
Yeah, and probably the biggest, like, turning point for me was actually when I went to college. So I went to, IU and Purdue. They were joined, in Indianapolis at the
Mhm.
time, and, you start out with your liberal arts classes, and I had a religion class, and I came home after about the 2nd day in that class, and I remember distinctly sitting at the table and talking to my dad, and I told him, I said, "Dad, I have to drop out of this class, this religion class.
Wow.
And he was like, why? And I said, the professor said, what if God didn't write the Bible? And it blew my mind.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't able to comprehend that.
Right.
But being there at the college, I met people from everywhere,
Mhm.
people from China, people from India, people from all around the world, Catholics and Hindus and, Islamic people. And I would talk to them about their beliefs. And then I started to find it fascinating because it was a person,
Yes. Yeah.
and it wasn't dogma somewhere, and it was different cultures, and that was really interesting to me. So then when I went to college in Kentucky to get my degree in horses and managing horse farms, I had to take a religion class. And by that time, I ate it up. It was so fascinating. All of the myths from Rome and Greece and Zeus and Aphrodite and all of these. The thing I remember learning about was that they would go to temples to dream or to bring offerings or for healing and things like that. And so I found all of that fascinating. And by then I was learning, what my mind was open to learning. And then
Mhm.
after that, when I started going to the meditation classes and things, that's when basically ancient Egypt really presented itself specifically. So, that was just a trajectory for everything.
It's interesting you talk about taking religious studies in college. I never thought about it, but I had to as well.
Mm.
It's interesting that we have to do that, but I was similar in the one that I took. It was just introductory to religion, but my professor did something completely different, and we talked about how Oprah was a religion. And, like, he went into, like, a whole like, I thought we would be studying, like, the traditional different religions and comparing them, like, that's what I wanted. And we got a book on how Oprah was a religion.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, "How does that make sense?" And he really went into depth on how, anything can really be considered a religion as soon as you have, like, a following and basically, like, a leader. And I'm like, "What you're talking about is a cult." I think this is cultish, but,
Okay,
um,
that's it.
yeah, it's interesting that we had to go that way. Okay. So we talked about you kind of working through college and then going to a meditation class, and that's where Egypt popped up. Describe that to me.
That was really one of the most powerful things that had happened to me so far in life with my spiritual practice. I was very, since I came from a religious background, the work of Doreen Virtue at that time was all about the angels and the
Mm,
archangels. And that was a really easy entry point into the world of spirituality outside of religion. And so in the meditation, we were supposed to meet a being.
mm,
So I knew I was going to meet an archangel. So you were to envision going across this bridge and then this being on the other side and then introducing themselves and saying stuff to you. And I went across the bridge and this being was there. And I asked for their name and I heard, I am Hathor. Heard of a Hathor before? So
what is
I was
that?
I was like, "I don't know who you are, you have to go away because I'm waiting for an archangel." And so I backed myself up in my brain, over the bridge, and I walked across the bridge again and asked her the name of this being, and "I'm Hathor." Like, "No, you're not. I don't know you." So I back up again over the bridge in my mind, and I come across the bridge again, and this being comes, and I ask for the name, and I hear, "I'm Hathor." So I roll my eyes and I'm just like, okay, fine, you're Hathor. My goodness. I had the sensation of like, I guess, growing up in church, you were overcome by the Holy
The
Spirit.
spirit, yeah.
Like my whole top of my head was tingling and felt like it was just opening up. My whole body was shaking and my heart was pounding and I couldn't catch my breath. And I did not know I wasn't hearing any words of wisdom or insight. Nothing. It's just basically I am Hathor and feel me, like making my presence known. And so I just sat there shaking and breathing and heart pounding and, came out. The teacher was like, okay, it's time to come back across the bridge and re enter this space and time. And so she turned the lights on and I was like, because she had heard, she was sitting right beside me. So she had heard me all this time. And I said, oh, what's a Hathor? And oh, well, she's an Egyptian goddess. And she is the goddess of beauty and love and music. And she's really amazing. And she was really into extraterrestrials at the time. And
Oh, okay.
so,
Mhm.
she turned me on to Tom Kenyon's work, which is, he's an amazing sound healer
Mhm.
and works with this group called the Hathors. So I
Mm.
read that and then I started learning about Egypt when a friend of mine said, hey, I'm doing this priestess program and I think you would really like it. And so I said, okay. And I just started. So, the basic practice of, saying a morning prayer every day and that sort of thing was really challenging for me because I had grown up, to have no other gods before me and this
Right.
type of thing. But then, the more I studied and the more I learned, Hathor was that golden calf that the Hebrews took
Yep.
out into the desert and Moses came down and he was very angry. So, Egypt has been there for a long time and the goddesses have been there for eons of time. And so it was really interesting for this experience to happen because you can't make that up,
Mhm.
for a name to come so clearly that I'd never heard, never experienced. And so it was really a huge turning point for me.
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that you had to ask your teacher, like, "What is a Hathor?" Like, that speaks for itself that you had absolutely no idea
Yeah.
who that was.
Yeah. So Hathor, she really, even though my studies took me, there was no Priestess of Hathor program at the time, which since I've developed one, but, Priestess of Isis. So I did that because that's what was available out there. And I learned a lot and just continue to learn, to this day.
Mm,
So which is very exciting.
absolutely, yeah, and I feel like so many of us end up finding our way to Egypt, or some people are just born and have this kind of call there, but just about every person I've ever talked to spiritually has some type of like draw there for whatever reason, whether it's, one of the pyramids that they've seen a picture of or one of the different deities. And I mean, there's thousands of them, but
Mm,
they'll get a name of somebody and they just, anytime they'll see my Egyptian tattoos and they're like, oh man, I've always loved Egypt.
yeah.
There's something about it that
Mm,
just calls, like, everybody to it in some way or another. I mean, even she would be my great-grandmother, Daisy, who was, I mean, basically Pentecostal, hardcore Christian. She went over there to study and learn, and she wanted to see the places that Jesus had went. And I
mm.
have a picture of her on a camel, and so when we were there together, I had to get my picture on my camel in,
Yeah.
like, the same area that she did because
Yeah.
she took that same trip and, like, 2 totally different, faiths, but
Right.
there's still a connection there.
Right. And I think it's interesting too, so not just with ancient Egypt, but also it's like you and your beliefs or practices tend to kind of draw in the people around. So if you had, a tattoo of, Ganesh
Yeah,
and all of the people that are
attracted to
very,
Ganesh. Yeah,
yeah,
would find
or
me.
the Hindu religion, they would be in your circle of discovery and your universe.
Mhm,
But if you had a little tattoo of the Buddha, then you
mhm,
would be, someone would come to you and, oh, I like your Buddha and I really, I try to meditate. Like you would have all of that and
mhm.
you would find those people. So I just find it really interesting that no matter what path you're on spiritually, that's, like attracts like,
Absolutely, yeah.
so, because of your path, that's what you're, being drawn to. And I think it'll be very fun to watch your podcast expand
Yeah.
because you are expanding it out beyond that ripple of ancient Egypt. I think you're going to have people on that also have Hinduism and Buddhism and the Native Americans and whatever else is out there, spiritualism. So I think that it'll be really encompassing about spirituality and not niched down so far.
Yeah.
So, as each of your guests are going to be very niched.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
That's kind of my goal, and with them kind of offering their understanding of things, like, I'm hoping my spirituality grows, and Egyptian studies are gonna be one of my I consider them like, pillars of, like, this, like, my own internal temple that, like, ancient Egyptian studies is one big corner of that, like, that will always be there. Just like my Native American traditions are one big corner in spiritualism and, like,
Hmm.
talking with spirit and believing that there's, like, spirit out there.
Hmm.
Like, these are all kind of cornerstones on my own interior temple here, but I'm wanting to, like, broaden it. I'm wanting to, connect those little antechambers of, like, different traditions, and, like, that's how I visualize it in my mind. I never wanna stop growing and just, like, be stuck in just, like, one kind of thing and, like, this is all there is.
And it's interesting too that you and I both grew up very religious and very religious atmospheres.
Yeah.
And, what do they teach you? That your body is the temple of
Temple?
God, right?
Yeah.
And so, but for you now in your life, God has many faces.
Mm.
And so, we are embodying practices of the Buddha. We are embodying practices of, whichever goddess that we need, at the time,
Yeah.
whether it's Sekhmet or Mother Mary or Mary
Mhm.
Magdalene. I mean, there's
Yes,
so
love Mary
much. I
Magdalene.
know, right? I find a lot of times that priestesses that are initiates that come to my priestess school, they also have these connections with Magdalene. So, and I
Yes.
think that she was a priestess. So it's like, yep, you're all
Yeah, we're all here. Yeah, it just makes so much sense the more, like, you even look into, like, I really try to dive into Mary Magdalene and things to do with kind of Christianity because I still have such a disconnect there from, like, all of the things I was taught growing up, and I have a real issue of being born of sin. Like, that
Mhm,
whole kind of
mhm.
concept me like, I immediately wanna, like, reject the whole
Right,
thing because of that.
right.
I mean, why would God or the divine, like, make this happen? How can something so pure as a baby be, like, already full of sin and you have to go be saved? Like, that never made
Mhm.
sense to me. And so I try to find little ways to connect with it, and Mary Magdalene was one of the big things, even though she's kind of an outcast and all of the things, but she
Mhm.
still has a connection to, Christianity and Jesus, and, like, that's one of the ways I can understand and find kind of common ground with a faith that I don't necessarily practice every day.
And I think the fact that she is an outcast,
Mhm.
to such a degree, it also kind of pulls us
Being
into her.
closer, yeah, we have kind of common ground there. We
Mhm.
understand.
Who's the underdog?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we understand being the outcast.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Hmm, I never thought about that.
I know.
I love it, I love it.
Yes.
My goodness, tell me a little bit about your priest program that you have now. How do you kind of work it, and how do you kind of help people find their spirituality through it?
That is something that, because of the experiences that I had through the work that I did,
Mhm.
and how it was so transformational. That's how I've put it together for the people that want to follow that path. There's always this draw. The thing that I hear the most is I feel very drawn to the goddess Isis, or I feel very drawn to the goddess Hathor or Sekhmet, and I want to, like, have some way. I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
They're looking for some type of structure to help them learn and connect with that goddess. And so the programs are designed so that you connect with them through the practices that the ancients did in the temples, through the festivals, the calendar of the ancient Egyptians, and the days that were sacred to those goddesses, and through the history. We do kind of also connect with actual texts. We look at, what do the walls say
Mhm.
about certain goddesses? Like, how do we know, to find out that Nephthys was also connected with Sachet, and that
Mhm.
she's not just lady of the house, but she's also lady of the library. It's how do they know that?
Yeah.
It's because it says so on the temple walls. And then also looking at actual priestesses
Mhm.
that were connected to these goddesses and learning about them and connecting with things that they would have done. It makes it real. So there's a good mix of history and mystery to because there is such magic in it. And a lot of times, the Egyptologists, it's like propaganda or it's political. And yes, it was that, but also
Right.
you wouldn't have that unless you had some type of faith
Mhm.
or devotion. There was something there. It wasn't just all, for show.
Yeah,
So that's it connects you daily, learning about the goddesses through the texts, the hymns, and daily practices, festivals, and priestesses kind of that are in your lineage that you can connect with too. So
absolutely. Well, someone who has went through your program, it was very helpful. Like, it is what made me create a daily spiritual practice, for sure.
good.
Because I had set things that I had to create and do every morning, every afternoon, evening, journaling and doing dream work and trying intentionally dreaming. Like that was a
Mhm.
thing that I had never thought about till I went through your priestess program. Like I
Mhm.
going to bed with thoughts in my head that this is what I want to dream about. This is what I want to learn. It really helped me create a spiritual practice that I never had. I may have meditated every once in a while or, I was already into spiritualism before I took your program. So I had guides that I talked to daily, but I never had any kind of set spiritual practice. I never had a
Mhm.
practice really.
Mhm.
I just had these things that I did every once in a while. It took actually going through your program and setting the goal that like this is what I want to do, this is what I want to finish and this is how I want to do it to actually create a spiritual practice that now has kind of gone above and beyond and I've incorporated so many other traditions and things into it, but I have a spiritual practice every day because I have went through your priestess program.
Well, and it gives us something that we're hungry for
Yeah.
and that we feel is missing, and that gives our life a special meaning, because there are so many things that we do on a mundane basis that, like taking a shower. So, in order to make taking a shower, which you would do every day, you just get in and you wash your hair and you get out and you dry off and you put on your makeup. So, but then with my lineage with ancient Egypt,
Mhm.
there's the whole purification ritual that took
Yes.
place, and that they would do to the priestesses and priests would do before they would go into the statues and do all of that for them.
Mm.
So then it becomes more you can turn that even if you don't have time the rest of the day because you have work and you have children and you have all these things, you can take your shower time and turn that into a spiritual practice
Mhm.
where, the ancients had a practice of infusing the body with the netaru. So as you're washing your hands are the hands of Khnum. Your hands are the hands of the mother Isis who
Mhm.
tends to her children. And you use the soap and the smelling good things that you always have in the shower because it smells good and makes you feel wonderful. And as you wash your hair, it's the hair of the noon or whatever. They had different deities that they would. So you wash your whole body with this thought that you are cleansing yourself as the God, as a part of divinity.
Mhm.
And then you can go forward into your day with this mindset, you know, you didn't just have a shower, you are purifying and preparing yourself for the day as a spiritual being in whatever job it is that you have. That helps, it sounds all woo woo, but it helps to ground you
Mhm.
because you're missing that in your life and you need that. And so now that you've done that, you feel complete.
It's what really gave me the structure that I was missing when I stopped going to church constantly. I liked the structure. I liked having, like, a place that I went and, worshiped and talked to God and, like, learned, but I just wasn't liking the words and the stuff that was being said to me that this is what you had to do, and I was so
Mhm.
confined into what I could feel and believe. But this gave me the structure to do it kind of on my own terms and create kind of my own little temple within my house and do things intentionally because we would do in that church, we would do kind of purification rituals and we would around Christmas time, we would wash each other's feet and
Mhm.
the things
Mhm.
like that. And so it was taking so many things that like I may have kind of understood growing up and like the purpose of that and like just really expanding upon it and doing it myself and like making me live a life with intention. And that's what that was. doing, and I still to this day, anytime I'm in the shower, that's what I do. I do a purification ritual and I release everything from my day, but then I say those things, my hands are the hands of Khnum, I am made to create, and, like,
Mhm.
just little things like that, those little affirmations and those little ways of honoring the Egyptian Neteru, like, I can put it all into one, but put it into my daily life, and
Mhm.
that is so important. I think that that's what religion really is supposed to give us, like, that structure to help us create kind of a spiritual practice that I feel like so many of us strive for that, like, we want that, and we just don't know how to kind of do that in today's kind of society.
And the ancient Egyptians, they everything in nature was alive and
Mhm.
filled with divinity. And the
Yes.
Native Americans, the same thing,
Mhm.
So the rocks have a name and the waters have a name and the wind has a name. So it just kind of helps you go out into the world. And spirituality and your spiritual practice is a very personal and individualized experience. And then to be able to have a community that you can share in those experiences, that's what the church has provided, for the people following religious paths. And that's what the ICM provides for people following a priestess path. It gives us a place, where once a month we can get together online and do a ritual.
Community, yeah.
Yeah, and have our online community where you can share things. So it provides all of that.
Yeah, that's what makes it so wonderful because you do have to create your own kind of practice. You have to do the work, daily or weekly if it's too hard to do daily, but you have to put in the work personally, but then you can meet up with a group and talk about, how are you kind of connecting to this? How are you planning to do this type of thing and see what works for them, and you get feedback and find things as well. And then with like sending you all of this stuff as well, getting your feedback is such like a phenomenal thing that, someone could be fumbling in the dark and be like, I don't know what this means. I keep getting this. What does this mean? And then you respond back and be like, well, I think this is what you're getting at here.
Right.
And that is such a big deal to have someone be able to do that as well.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
wonderful. I love what you've created.
Thank you so much.
Is there something from your practice that you do daily? Is there something?
Breathe.
Breathing exercises or just being alive?
Yes, being alive. I think probably just the practice. I'm just I try to come back. I guess I would say come back to home within myself
Okay.
every day to stay connected to spirit. A morning ritual with the goddess at my table, a little altar just to light the incense. Sometimes that's all I need, and I just need 3 minutes
Mhm.
to just stand there, to acknowledge her within myself, and to go about the day knowing that I can be of service and, just stay grounded but connected.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, a spiritual practice doesn't have to be, doing stuff like every single hour of the day or 3 times a day. Like just the smallest little, thought or leading something with intention, like
Hmm.
that's the most important thing.
Right, right.
Just to have something that connects you to, some kind of source or whatever it
Right.
is.
That's
That's
personal or meaningful. And sometimes, when I'm struggling with something or just feel like I want to connect, I'll pull a card,
Mhm.
um, just to see if there's any words of encouragement. Or a lot of times I'll pull cards and, be like, where do I need to like stay focused in this situation? Or what is something that I'm too busy, to see? And this will bring me back. Like, what do I need to refocus on? Or where do I need to put my energies into? And I'll pull a card for that. So, that's also very helpful.
You told me before that, like, nature is a big aspect of kind of
Mhm.
your spirituality. Is there things that you do outside in nature that might be different than inside, or is it just kind of connecting in with.
It's just being outside. I remember, I grew up in the country, so just, being out by the creek or walking through the woods or being out where there's nobody.
Yeah.
My favorite places to go in Egypt, yes, there were the temples, but if you could take me out to the desert where there's nobody around, or at least not very many people around for
A way for you to get back, but
miles and miles of sand and
yeah,
sky. It made me feel like it makes me feel like I'm in a space big enough to hold me.
right.
because if you're inside walls all the time or you're around people all the time, you get outside, it literally is a place where I have space big enough to breathe.
Yeah. Being inside can feel so restricted,
Yeah.
even in, like, a ginormous,
Right.
stadium
And
or
when kids are inside, what do parents tell them to do? Go
go
outside,
Yeah.
right? Because they know, yes, it's a place where they can blow off steam, but intrinsically, we know that being outside is grounding and calming and soothing and, roll around in the dirt, get dirty, like get your hands in the soil, pick up leaves and sticks and do stuff with them is very grounding.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and we're surrounded by life outside, where inside, yes, I have plants and I have crystals and animals and living things, but you are literally surrounded by life outside.
hmm
And I think that's one of the biggest things that drew me to Egypt because, Neteru, that's where we get the word nature, and there's such a dynamic aspect of, like, every living thing around us being that divinity, that Neteru, every little thing. I think that's what really made me see that every little thing was alive and connected, and just the way they honored that, like, through their gods, and every little thing had something to do with somebody in the pantheon, and, like,
yes.
that was such a big deal, even though, like, sometimes the Egyptian stuff can feel so daunting because there is so much. They were so advanced, and every little thing had meaning, and you walk into those temples, and the script's, like, this big, and it's perfect, but it all had intention, and
Mhm.
where they
Yeah,
wrote
which
it,
wall?
which
Yeah.
wall they wrote it, where the light comes down, like, it all had
Yeah.
meaning, and that can feel so daunting, but then I just remember that, like, it just reminds me that everything has a purpose and everything that is connected.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
there's always something new to explore there as
Right.
well, even though it feels daunting a lot of the times, or,
Mhm.
I mean, us trying to learn hieroglyphs, and there's a
So many.
a bazillion of
I'm
those.
still preschool.
Yeah, I can say, like, 4 words.
Yeah.
It can be so much, but there's always more to learn. I never feel like I'm gonna run out of things to
You'd never.
or
Yeah.
understand, and every time, like, I look in the news, something new has been discovered there,
Yeah.
and or the times we've went back, like, there's just always something new to see. I've had people ask me, like, "Well, aren't you tired of, like, going to Egypt or doing that? Like, why don't you travel, like, go somewhere else or whatever?" And it's like, "But I haven't seen this one thing." Like, there's, like, how can I not, like, wanna, like, just keep reading about that or looking, like, I love how digital we are now, where, we can actually find sites where you can see this stuff on the walls, and we can decipher it if we wanted to and
Right.
find all the things.
Right. Yeah.
It's impressive how far we've come,
Mhm.
things like that.
Yeah. It is.
What would be something that you wished someone who was starting a spiritual journey, what would be something that you wish that they understood, like, starting out?
That it is your own journey. Find the teachers and the books and the teachings and the practices that resonate with you. If something doesn't feel right, trust your instinct on that and don't follow it. Be discerning. Yes, I had a being come to me and said her name was Hathor. Um, and I was discerning about that. I said, no, I don't know who you are, go away. But, there was something there. And if anything feels off, you have control over who comes into your space and how much they can come into your space. And, you can be spiritually aware, but you don't have to always be open to all of the things that are out there around
Mhm.
you because that would be overwhelming.
Yes.
So be discerning, to trust your instinct, to do things to stay grounded and enjoy your
Mhm.
spiritual practice and
Yeah.
know that it's yours.
Yeah. There's no point in trying to do anything or get into anything if you're not feeling joy from it. If it has become just, more like your mundane life or something that you have to do, then, like, why? Why are you doing it? And just because you're spiritual and, we're these open individuals, you're right. We don't have to be open all the time. And I think setting
Spiritual boundaries.
boundaries is, like, such a
Mhm.
big thing, whether it's, with other human beings or with the spirit world, or, when I first started getting into things like this, like, I felt like spirit was bombarding me constantly, and being around big groups of people is still hard for me to this day because it's just like I'm getting so much information, and, like, I'm feeling the energy of everyone around me and all of their stuff and all of my stuff, and
Mhm.
I had to put up firm, like, spiritual boundaries on those
Right.
things, and it's a
And I think people are afraid to do that, or they
yeah,
don't think that they have the power to do that.
yeah,
And literally, it's a thought in your head
yeah,
that all you have to do is say, I'm going to be in this space and you don't get to touch me. And I acknowledge that you're here. I honor that you're here, but this is my experience. And so, unless you come through another being that I work with on a consistent basis, then I don't need to hear from you. I think people don't realize they have the power to do that.
yeah, or if you get to know your spirit people or the Egyptian Neteru, like, I will literally never forget, our first time in Egypt, and we were going to, I think, Edfu. I think we were at Edfu, but all the people selling their stuff out front,
Mhm, mhm,
and they were, hassling me, and that was the first time I had seen, like, all of those people. Like, a man tried to put, like, a bracelet on my wrist and stuff, and I was very overwhelmed, and I was really
mhm.
scared, and walking into that temple, I was so overwhelmed that I almost couldn't enjoy it. I wasn't really seeing the things around me because I kept thinking about having to leave and having to walk back through all of those people, and that was just, like, that was so scary to me, and
Mhm,
I remember before we left, I asked Sekhmet, I said, "I need you to, like, form a wall around me." I
mhm.
tried to think of, like, the most scary, powerful, like, person
Yes,
in my spirit team, and I was like,
right,
"Alright, Sekhmet, I need help here. I need you to build, like, a wall of fire around me or whatever. I need to keep these people away from me because I'm about to have a nervous breakdown right now."
right, right.
And I remember we were getting ready to walk out, and the biggest gentleman in our group, like, put his arm around me, and he was like, "Come on, honey, I'll walk with you." And he just started walking with me, and I watched the rest of our group form a wall
Mhm.
around me, and it was like watching, like, this spiritual thing. I didn't ask it aloud. I just
Right,
said, "Sekhmet, help me."
right.
And then I watched the people around us form a physical barrier around me to where the people couldn't get to me, and the man that did the thing with the bracelet, he could not get to me. Like, I watched him, like, start to try, and it was like, "Nope, you
Yeah.
can't." And that is so cool. Like, that was my biggest lesson on, putting up barriers.
Mhm.
And, I can do it. I put my protection on every day, but when you need, like, extra backup or whatever, it was like, yeah, she was right there for me and was like, "Yeah, alright, I'll build you a wall. I'll build you a human wall, and I will
Right,
protect you." Like,
right.
that is such a big deal. What
Yes.
do you think, the other question I had that I actually really wanted to ask you, moments of synchronicity that felt too aligned to ignore?
I will tell you one that happened recently that I shared with you earlier. So, Lexi and I were talking earlier today, and it's winter right now. So, of course, there's a lot of cloudy days. Today is actually very nice. It's sunny, blue skies finally. But I was just really struggling and nothing really too serious. But, they're just the weight of everything was just on me. And it's been a very difficult year with my health and, a lot of endings and conflicts and things and harassment that I wasn't, expecting. So just feeling the weight of all of that. And I had a book that I had started just randomly opening, every morning just to sit in my chair for a moment. And it was about, I think it was called Mistress of the Temple. Just had museum pieces in there and the role of Egyptian women throughout ancient Egyptian history. And there was a statue that I opened up, and it was of the Princess Maris Ankh. And I read about it, and yeah, that was pretty cool. She was from one of the early dynasties. And then that night, I was sitting down, or actually, I was in bed and I was thinking about seeing that photo and, thinking, well, all names have a meaning. Ankh means life, but I know merit is beloved, but what's Maris? And so, pulled out my phone in the middle of the night while I'm thinking of this. And the meaning of her name was she who loves life. I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, I really felt held and supported in that moment of, kind of like my soul and sadness, hopelessness, kind of crying out to the universe,
Yeah.
not knowing that I was asking for help, but that someone from history in the past had me open to the book a picture of her whose name meant she who loves life. And so whenever I'm feeling discouraged about things or just struggling with the lack of light at the moment, I think about her and how encouraging that was. So I think that was something that's still very meaningful to me.
Where do you think synchronicities come from? Do you think
Well, that's a whole other topic right there.
I know.
We have to do that on
I was
another
gonna say
podcast.
it could be really short, like
So I wrote a whole blog post about synchronicity or coincidence. And I think you talked about it in your previous podcast about vision boards and why they work. It aligns your thoughts, your subconscious up to something that you're looking for.
right.
So is it a sign? If you're looking for a new car and you're thinking about getting a Tahoe and then
All you see is Tahoe.
all those, is that a sign or is that a coincidence?
Right.
I feel like that's a coincidence,
Yeah.
because it's not life shattering. It's not something that, oh, Spirit wants me to buy a Tahoe for sure, a red one. Well, maybe a Tahoe isn't actually in your budget. You
Right.
just want one
Yeah.
and you like them. So if it's not a sign, it's a or a synchronicity, it's a coincidence. But synchronicity is more like what I just described with finding Mare's Ankh, because why would I turn to that page? Why would her name mean so much of
Mhm.
something that was a message of what I needed? Like, embrace life, don't be so discouraged. Life is a gift, it's sacred, and so that to me is a synchronicity.
Do you think synchronicities come from just like things lining up? Or do you think, the divine or spirit like sends those things to us when we need them most? Like that's like I think of it like why tarot card, like shuffling cards
I
and
know.
a card comes out like
Yes.
or the card I pulled today from my new deck that I got and then
Yes.
you open the book to the page
To
on
that page.
to the yeah.
That's synchronicity.
Yeah.
That lets you synchronicities let you know you're on the right path in a way that, like, I literally just opened the book to look at it.
Yeah. And
But
it
the
was the
page
page.
that I opened up was the page of the card that you had pulled,
Yeah.
which was
The
Priestess
priestess
Path.
path. Yeah.
So
In
that
my Egyptian deck.
yeah, and so that's like you can't make that up. It
Yeah.
wasn't something I was actively searching for in my subconscious. It was just something that happened
Mhm.
that lets me know today is a great day.
Yeah.
I'm meeting here with another fellow priestess and we're going to do priestessy things and it's a good day.
Mhm.
So I think that's synchronistic. It's something that the universe gives you that's like
Yeah,
every
that's what I was
yeah,
getting at, like, do you
it
think
is
it's
good.
just like a universal, like, little thing? I have a friend that says, you know, high five sp I have several friends that go, "High five spirit," or "Thanks spirit," or whatever, and it's like because, like, something like, a synchronicity has happened, something's aligned, and
Right.
they believe spirit brought it. You think synchronicities are just, like, the universe's way of
Yes.
saying you're on the right path? Yeah, me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's can be challenging to I mean, because we could look at that as coincidence,
Yeah.
but it wasn't I feel like it was different from that,
Mhm.
it was different from seeing a Tahoe on the road everywhere,
Mhm.
it was just because
It was too perfectly timed and lined up.
yeah, and I didn't even like I was like, "Oh, that's so cool," she got the Priestess Path card and the Lotus or whatever the other one was you got, so but it wasn't something that I was contemplating,
Yeah.
like
Now your Tahoe analogy, now if I had said, "Man, should I get a Tahoe?" And then I'm sitting at a stoplight and 5 Tahoes walked or, like, drove right in front of me, I might think that's a sign.
you might think that's a sign, so
But
then you
but
look
if I just started seeing Tahoes, like, around in my daily life, yes, I would think that was a coincidence because
yes, because then you
I'm
have
thinking about them.
because you have to also then, like I said, use discernment.
Yeah.
Because if you're like, man, I should get a Tahoe, but then you look into it and it's like, I can't afford that.
Mhm.
The purchase of it and the gas and the insurance and all of these things. So it's like, okay, well, maybe I need to rethink that. So
I think a lot of it's about
discernment.
timing and, like,
Mhm.
when stuff shows up or, like, when I ask the universe for signs,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah, like you posted
Yeah, I
about
my
that's
post the
good.
other day, like, I kind of leave it up to spirit, and I give them specific timelines, though. I'll say, this one was I wanted 3 signs by the end of the year. That
Mhm,
was kind of my thing, but usually it's I want 3 signs in a week, or the
mhm,
next 3 days show me one specific, like, image or whatever it is, like, I wanna see that in the world. To me, that is, like, signs from spirit, or certain things like you look in at the book, those are synchronicities. Yeah,
mhm,
they're definitely different than coincidences, and I know some people say there's no coincidences. Thoughts are actual things, and we draw stuff to us, and we draw our awareness to things, and
right.
so, yeah, just like your, Tahoe analogy, or well, now we have to be careful of, like, our phones listening in.
I know.
Like, I have this conversation with my mom all the time because she'll be like, she'll be talking about something. She's like, "Do you get these videos?" And
Mhm.
it'll be like some kind of crazy thing, and she's like, "I keep getting them, and I've never talked about it." And I'm like, "You had to have, like, Googled it or said some type of little thing, because, like, if I today said I love potbelly pigs or something, I guarantee I'm gonna start getting videos of potbelly pigs on my
Yes,
phone."
little pig sanctuary.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so, the internet
So
knows
as soon
now.
as you get one, send me a screenshot.
I'll be like, "Yes, look,
And
here's."
that must mean you're supposed to get a
And
potbelly pig,
and
right?
apparently, I mean, Luna loves pigs, so maybe I am I'm working on Brandon, the funny farm here.
Okay.
I just need miniature animals.
Yeah, then you guys can discuss, is this a synchronicity or is it a coincidence?
Brandon, yeah, I try to tell him all the time when I see wiener dog things, I'm like, "It's a sign, we need another one." He doesn't believe me, but
Oh.
is there anything that you would hope that someone listening to this today would take away from your story, your version of finding your path? Anything in particular?
Um, I think that it would be that everyone's path is unique. So whatever path or synchronicities that you have, don't try to think that your path is or less magical than someone else. Oftentimes in meditation classes, when you go around and you share your meditations and someone that just says, all I saw was the color blue. I didn't see,
Right.
rainbows and unicorns and cupcakes flying through the air. So they feel like their meditation was not as special or whatever. So just don't compare your
Yeah,
experiences to someone
to
else,
anyone else's.
to know that your experiences can be your own. And when they happen for you, that makes them even more special,
Yeah.
you know. And I think also just to know that magic is out there.
Yeah.
Magic is out there and it will find you.
It will find
I mean,
you.
Hathor found me, Maris Ankh found me, Om found me,
Mm,
so that's a
yes.
whole other topic for
Yes.
another day.
I I hope to have a whole conversation with you just on setting.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
have to.
We have to.
We have to.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I think that should be it for today. I
Okay.
if there
That's
unless
a great chat.
Yeah, unless there's
Yeah.
anything else that you would wanna talk about
I
in.
think that there's lots of little rabbit holes that
I
all
know.
of your listeners can go down on this
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
So,
There's too many little snippets there,
yeah.
so.
So enjoy and you're welcome.
Yes! Look up all the things. Look up all
Right.
the well, if someone is interested in you or the things that you do, the Priestess program, your Patreon, what are the names of your things and where can they find you?
So you can find me at The Goddess Inside everywhere. I'm not really active on Instagram or Facebook, but I do have those pages. But the Goddess Inside website is where you'll find all the information for my blog posts and any classes that I have coming up, as well as my Patreon, which is the Goddess Inside's Egyptian Mystery School on Patreon. And that is right now a bank of information. There's texts that you can learn about. There's hieroglyphs you can learn about. There are different gods and goddesses that you can learn about. There's a great mix of history and mystery PDFs, audio lessons, as well as video presentations.
My
So
goodness.
I know there's so much there. And so you can just basically take a class with me as much as you want to by joining Patreon. And then my priestess program is also there on my website. And I've got the Priestess of Isis program that is open, and Priestess of Hathor is getting ready to be launched. I was thinking spring, but I think it will be February.
Mm.
So, yes.
Yes, that's
Yes.
exciting.
Yes, and, Sekhmet then will be next after that. So, I already have these programs running, just kind of updating them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, making them
Mhm.
meatier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all like a little bit more information in there.
Yes, yes.
Very cool, very
So,
cool.
one more thing.
Yeah,
If you
absolutely.
wanted any film images from places in Egypt,
Yes.
there's a special film page on my photography site, which is aussetimages.com. And you can get prints on, for your wall. You can get it on a mug, various things around Egypt on film. So
Yes, they're lovely. Are you still doing your soul sessions?
I would love to do more of those. Yeah, there's information about my soul essence photography sessions on there as well, where we talk about your life, your story, your healing, your journey in life, and we tell your story through images. And you did that with me,
Mhm.
and it was a really fun
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's really I wrote you a big long letter. You were doing a giveaway. You were looking for another person to do one for.
Mm,
And I wrote you this big long letter of like all the things in my life and then we kind of figured out the key type of themes and then figured out how to portray those in images.
yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, so if you're on my Auset Images website, you'll see Lexi's video of
Mhm.
her images, and then also provided you a magazine that had your story and the images that kind of go along with that. So, and I play the harp too.
I was getting ready to say that. I forgot
I
until we
know.
talked and I was
And
like, "The harp."
yeah, so when your slideshow of your images has your your name
Mhm.
in music. So, and that's a whole other podcast.
Yes, yes, we will do a separate podcast on Auset.
Yes.
We need to do a separate podcast on places in Egypt.
Mhm, mhm.
And then we definitely need to do one about your music for
Yeah,
sure.
that was a great journey right there.
Yes. My gosh, we have so many other things to talk about,
I know, I know.
which tends to happen when we're together. But
Yes.
thank you so much for coming all the way down here.
Thank you for having
Thank you
me.
for being my very first guest.
Thank you. I'm
Yes.
so honored.
Woo!
It was so good to meet all of you and continue to stay in touch with Lexi and all that she has coming up for you on her podcast because there's going to be a whole like range of things to learn about.
There's way too many rabbit holes I can go
Yeah.
down. So
Yeah.
hopefully we have a lot of stuff. Thank you all for joining us today. If for some reason you can't find Auset and her things, you can get a hold of me and I will direct you to her.
Put them in the show notes,
Yes,
as
we
they
will.
say.
Yes, we will put them in the show notes.
All right.
All right, guys, we'll see you soon.